Welcome to the National Center for the Middle Market CEO Growth Champion Series. My name is Doug Farron, Associate Center Director. GE Capital and Fisher College of Business at The Ohio State University have created a groundbreaking partnership to study and support the middle market. The center is the first of its kind in the nation, focused on providing research, thought leadership, and resources to address challenges and drive growth of middle market companies. The middle market is a significant driver of the U.S. economy, accounting for 1/3 of private sector GDP and 41 million jobs, yet has long received little attention from policymakers and the public. The center's initial research has identified a select group of middle market companies that not only survived the recent recessionary period, but demonstrated exceptional growth. The National Center for the Middle Market is building on this foundational research by delving more deeply into how these growth champions achieve superior results. In the first of a series of executive discussions, we've brought together experts from across industry and academia to share perspectives and advice on building a corporate culture. We are pleased to be joined by three distinguished panelists. Greg Tunney is the Chief Executive Officer of R.G. Berry Corporation, a marketer of slippers and accessories based in Ohio. Greg joined R.G. Berry in 2006 and is the principal architect of the company's current growth strategy. He is responsible for the revitalization of the company's culture. Greg's commitment to organizational development and operational excellence earned him the prestigious Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award in 2009. He has more than 20 years of senior-level executive experience in footwear and retailing, including such companies as Brown Shoe Company and May Department Stores. Nancy Abbott is the leader, organization and staffing for GE Capital based in Connecticut. Nancy is responsible for ensuring GE Capital has the right people in the right jobs across the organization. In her current role, she works on strategies to attract, develop, and retain talented employees. Nancy has held multiple human resource leadership roles across the research, insurance, corporate, and financial services organizations throughout her career at GE. She also serves as a lead recruiter at Vanderbilt's Owens School of Business, where she received her MBA. Finally, Dr. Ray Noe is the Robert and Ann Hoyt Designated Professor in Management and Human Resources at Fisher College of Business. Professor Noe is one of the foremost academic authorities in the area of training and development. He's an author of 3 texts in human resources management, including Employee Training and Development, which includes the use of technologies in training. His teaching and research have been recognized by awards from the American Society for Training and Development. Before we begin, I would like to encourage our virtual audience to submit questions throughout the duration of the discussion. The center will be compiling all questions and organizing them into the most commonly asked issues, and will respond via email to all attendees with answers. This will also be posted on our website, www.middlemarketcenter.org. And now, I'll turn it over to Professor Ray Noe.
Thanks, Doug. Welcome. Our discussion here today focuses on culture, which is kind of a nebulous term, hard to get our hands around, and its role in business success and in talent management. And let me just make a few introductory comments about culture. First of all, like I said, it's a hard concept to get your hands around. It's hard to measure a culture. Usually we look at things like employee engagement or attitude surveys to really get a feel for it. But when we think about what it really is, it's kind of what the employees actually experience. What does it mean to work here? And as customers, we kind of have a good idea what a culture is. We know some of the companies that are known for having a unique and a strong culture, like Southwest Airlines or IKEA, Whole Foods, for example. But in terms of talent management, the role of culture is really, really important because it kind of creates the whole sauce, if you will, around which talent management practices occur. And if you look at some of the recent data about talent management and corporate culture, about 20% of the firms actually believe they have a culture that supports talent management, but 85% think it's really important to develop that culture. So today we're going to talk about how do you develop a culture, we're going to talk about how do we tie it into talent management, and hopefully provide some insight into middle market firms who want to develop a culture or tweak their culture, to support talent management and business success. In general, when we think about talent management, we think of a lot of practices, as you guys know. We think about succession planning, we think about performance management, we think about recruitment. And one of the issues is, how do we ensure that our culture fits into those talent management practices? I mean, that's really important, so that what we say and what we're doing in terms of our culture and our leadership of our culture is reflected in those practices. So Greg, let me ask you, you're R.G. Berry, known for developing a culture. Can you tell us a little bit about your cultural framework? Why did you develop it? What is it?
Sure, Ray, and it's a pleasure to be here today with you and Nancy. I think to understand a little bit about where our culture is today, you have to understand where I kind of came from, because it has a big impact on it. In the early 80s, if you took the footwear industry that I was in, about 90% of the footwear industry was all produced in the United States. And about the mid-80s, a lot of that started to go offshore. In fact, today, 98% of all footwear is made offshore that's consumed in the United States. And so early part of my career was really, I was part of a turnaround team and worked on restructuring and outsourcing companies. I was at a company that had over 30,000 employees and over 32 domestic factories. And when we went through that, it was a great process for the company. We were able to outsource all of its production, and I was able to learn a lot from it. From there, I went to another company up in upstate New York, did the same thing. We restructured the company, outsourced the manufacturing, deleveraged the balance sheet, all those things that you go through. The thing that I noticed as I was going through each one of those, there was a change in the business momentarily, but over time it really kind of just set into where it was before. Yeah, the manufacturing may have been outsourced, but there really wasn't any change in the business. And I had come across an article that was actually in Harvard Business Review, and it was done by McKinsey, and they had done an interview with over 3,000 companies, and the question that they asked was, how engaged are you with your employer? And out of it, they had over 70% of all employees that were interviewed in this, and it was an interview of 3,000 companies that were not only in the United States, but internationally as well. But over 70% of them were disengaged. And I kind of looked at that, and it was one of those moments in my life where I said, wow, 70% of all these employees are disengaged. How can you function? How can you move forward? And not to use a team analogy, but I can't imagine a football team being able to move forward if out of the 11 players on the field, 70% of them were disengaged. You'd have no success. Right. And so I really kind of took it right then and say, what could I do as a leader to figure out how to get people engaged? And so when I came to R.G. Berry, I'd already gone through the restructuring and all those things. I was really looking for some secret sauce, if you will, of how to gain engagement and develop a culture of engagement so that we had a majority of our team members engaged in the company and not disengaged.
And where did you start in that process?
Well, we started in the process of really bringing the group together and the team together. It was a company that had been in existence for over 60 years. There was, as you can imagine, in any company that's 60 years old, there is a lot of culture. It goes on the walls, it goes in the paint, it goes into the carpet, it's all over the company. And we really had to kind of sit down with the team members and really talk about developing a different culture, a culture that could get people engaged. And we did an initial survey, and of course we were just like any other company. I think we were at 68% disengaged team members. And we really talked about what kind of environment, what type of culture we could develop that would make people engaged, so that when they woke up every morning, they were coming to an environment that was going to make them engage. It was inviting, it was invigorating, it was going to be seamless, it was going to be world class that they could be part of. And so we really started to gather as a group and say, what is it we have to do in order to do that? One of the biggest moments was after becoming the CEO, is going to my first board meeting and saying, we need to develop a culture here. And by the way, we're going to need funding to do that, and to go to the board and request that funding and the purpose of it. It was a big moment for our company because I think the board understood the importance of it. They were willing to fund it. They've funded it ever since, and I think it's made all the difference in the world. And if you look at a company like ours in an industry, we've had 6 straight years of growth. We've been a top quartile performer. In our industry, it's notorious for being up and down quite a bit, just because it's the fashion industry, and usually you have one good year, one bad year. And I think what has made all the difference is the culture we've been able to develop.
Nancy, in your experience, is this where we start to develop a culture, is with the board and the interaction with the board? Or
It could be. I mean, I think every company has a culture, and the question is it accidental or not purposeful, or is it one that you've thought about and that you're using to propel your company forward? So as Greg talked, he's coming into a company where it sounds like, they had a culture. I'm not sure, if it was, a culture that they'd worked on and that was going to propel the company forward. But everybody's got a way that they work. I think the big difference is to look at the way that you want to be and the aspects of your company that you think will help you to succeed, and then hone in on those. So, it may be with the board, to answer your question. You may have different cultures in different pockets of your company. I think it's not difficult to start small and to work, through the company, to start to look at what are the success factors. But you've got to have the board, you've got to have senior leaders, you've got to have everybody on board with this, or it's not going to work. And I think as you're starting to, think about culture in a really purposeful way, if you've got a tough time in your business and everybody goes, well, the culture thing I'm not going to worry about anymore. We'll get back to that when times are better. Or if you've got anybody in the chain of command saying, once they finish the culture speech, we'll go back to what we're doing during our day jobs. Then it's not going to work. You've got to have aspects and success factors for your company that really resonate with everybody in the company, and you got to get them on board. Because I think in any company, people can sort of smell, is this the flavor of the month? Right. This too shall pass, I'll just wait. And then next year they'll be talking about some other, other values, other, aspects, other success factors, other cultural norms. And so I'll just wait for these to go and see if I like the next one's better. If that happens, it won't stick, and it won't propel your company forward to have, the kind of outcome that Greg had from his company.
Greg, what values and beliefs do you have in your culture at R.G. Berry? I know when I worked at IBM in the 80s, I was shocked when I went in as an intern, and they looked me up and down and said, "We wear white shirts here." I mean, that's part of the culture. And so what was that all about? And they handed me a book to read, and it was all about how Tom Watson wanted his salespeople to be viewed as professionals. So we all wore white shirts when I was at corporate headquarters, unless you were a wild duck, meaning you were an inventor or did something fantastic. And so you could wear striped or colored shirts. So when we went to the cafeteria for lunch, as an intern, naive intern, we'd look around and go, oh, there's a blue shirt, there's a striped shirt. Culture is more than that, though, isn't it? I mean, the values and beliefs you have at R.G. Berry support your strategy. I mean, can you talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, I think when you get into the culture or the actual values and beliefs, that's actually where we started as an organization. We really started to talk to people about what do we want this culture to look like. So we said, okay, is this going to be a culture about transparency? And we really had to kind of start walking that talk. We started off with something as simple as we really had an open kimono to anybody, any information in the company. And I know at the beginning the board was a little concerned about that we were going to have an open format, but we really started on a monthly basis where we would bring the whole group together. We'd have a KPI, which is called the Key Performance Indicators, and everybody in the company would come together, all the team members, and they would actually see the same things I see. They would see the whole P&L, they would see everything that happened in the company, where the expenses were, and all of a sudden there was an amount of transparency that hadn't been there before. Not because I think people were hiding it or anything, but the idea of having transparency out there was one of those first core beliefs or values that we thought was very important for us. And everybody right away started, there was people that we had there for 20, 30, 40 years with the company that had never been exposed to that type of information. And we just thought that it was really imperative that everybody understood what was going on. So that was kind of the first big aha moment that we had in developing the culture that we have today. We have just like any other company, we have some core values and beliefs. One of them is transparency, one is trust. And as you go through each one of these, I think it's what Nancy says. It's something that we are on a journey. It's not something that just happens once a year at an offsite. It's something that happens every day in the company. And the great thing about it as a CEO is that they hold me accountable for those core beliefs and values of the company now. If they see that there's a senior manager, at our company we call our senior managers coaches. At the next level we have captains, and at the next level it's team members. So it's a very flat organization. It's only 3-tier. And so anybody has the ability to call someone out if they're not living up to the core values of the company. And for the 6 years that I've been there, it's interesting. We've had very few people that we have had to ask to leave our company on a performance basis. It's actually been violations of the values of the company and the beliefs of the company. We've had some individuals that I remember when I first got there, we had a person that was really doing a fantastic job as far as performance, and the results were just incredible. But the values were not in line with our company values. And I had to go to the board of directors and say, we're going to let this senior person go, who they saw as a potential succession even to me. And it was a tough decision, because if he actually took his IQ and split it in two, it was probably more than mine was. And so when I looked at that, it was a tough decision, but we knew right then and there, it was very early on in the process, we knew we couldn't violate the core beliefs of our company. And I think that it's something that we're not perfect by any means. We're getting better each day, but where we're at today versus where we were 5 or 6 years ago, it is a very rich culture. People feel it. It's not for everybody. Some people aren't comfortable with that much transparency, to be able to call the CEO out on a meeting and say, hey, wait a minute, I don't think you're right on that. Not everybody is comfortable in their skin being able to do that. So I don't think our culture is for everybody, but I think it really is important for us.
When I talk to people about the GE culture, I actually say the same thing. I'm not sure our culture is for everybody. We look at, I think similar to you do, the what and the how. And I think it's courageous to look at the how work gets done, especially if you've got a senior leader in a company, and say, you got great numbers, you're doing great things for the company, but the way you do it just doesn't fit with us. And to part ways, because you may be losing a big income stream, you may be losing somebody that got stuff done, but how they get it done telegraphs to the rest of the company that you're not serious about the rest of the values. And the longer you've got somebody especially in a visible spot, that gets things done in a way that doesn't mesh with your values, the longer you undermine the cultural change that you want to make. One of the things that we've done is, we've been in business for 130 years, and our culture has, evolved, and the things we focus on has evolved. But we started to get, very specific about the things that we want people to do. Expertise. We want people to actually, know what they're doing. And we have what we call them behavioral anchors, but we have a list. It's simply a list of the things. If you're somebody answering the phone and doing customer service, or if you're the head of a huge division, here's what expertise looks like at your level. Here's the actual things that I need you to do. So managers tell me that I can sit down and have a conversation with somebody about the cultural norms, about the things that we need people to do, what we call our growth values, and I can make it really real because I've got some aids that help me think about what does that action look like, what does that behavior look like. We have an inclusiveness value. What does that look like? What does teaming look like if you're in a small team, as a software developer, for example, or what does teaming look like if I'm, the head of a sales organization. So we've got it across the entire organization. I think that helps people think about not just what you get done, but how you do it in a way that sort of takes the squishiness and mystery out of culture. So I think if you can think about what are the success factors for your company, no matter what size, and then what are the actual behaviors that you've got to do to exemplify that success factor, that value. And then how do I make managers, look at somebody? Because people have said to me, well, the values, that squishy stuff, how do I really rate somebody on that? How do you really put them on a scale and rate them? It's got to come down to actionable behaviors, or else you can't really make that judgment. And we want everybody to use the same yardstick. So we have, done quite a bit of work on what are the success factors, and then what are the actual behaviors that get you to either be, great or in the middle or not so good, and then have the conversation like Greg did with, you're not making it on that aspect of how we work here, and moving on. Or on the flip side, we have people that if you do a great job, then good things come your way. We look at compensation, we look at bonus, we look at training opportunities, development opportunities, promotions, all on the what and the how.
Greg, how do you do that at R.G. Berry? I mean, it's one thing to have the value and vision, which is hard enough, to get in place and get acceptance of. And then the next part is, well, how do we, as Nancy said, reinforce these behaviors with our talent management system? So can you talk a little bit about what you might do at R.G. Berry in terms of recruiting, development, performance management, compensation, rewarding people for following the values?
Yes, we were fortunate. When I got to R.G. Berry, we looked at our workforce, our team, and when we looked at it, we saw that over the next 5 years, we were going to have about 40% of our team members retire. It was an older group, and so we knew that we were going to have a certain amount of churn just because of attrition of retirement that was coming up. And so we really looked at it and we said, you know what, we have a point in time right now to really make a difference. And it really started at the recruiting side. We identified certain characteristics, certain character beliefs that people had, so that when we went out and we recruited Ohio State, but when we went out, there were certain characteristics of these individuals we wanted to have. Did they have integrity? Did they really have trust? Were they honest? Really going through those, and there's things that we test them on and find out how real they are and how candid they are about what they believe in. But we really believed that we had to first start with recruiting, that anybody that we were going to bring in, we knew exactly what we wanted, what we needed as a company. So when we brought those in, because I'm kind of a big believer, I have not been very successful at changing people's core beliefs. What you believe in, what you really desire in life, those are core beliefs, and I haven't been very good at changing those in people. In the business that we're in, the fashion business, you can teach people the logistics side, the merchandising side, the fashion side of it, but actually their core beliefs, we wanted to make sure that when they had those coming in, we weren't going to try to remake people or anything like that. We wanted them to have the same core beliefs that we had, how to work hard, how to celebrate. We got a whole list of things that are very important to us. But it really started from the recruiting side, because we thought we really had an opportunity to open that up, and we've brought those people in. And it's interesting the amount of energy, the vibe that they have brought into an organization. And it's really kind of a cool thing to watch, I'm one of the older guys now, and to watch these younger folks come in and to really grasp the culture of the company and really actually help us mold it and shape it going forward. On the performance side of it, we do have an actual formalized way that we do it. I believe that you can actually sit down. It's not just subjective, but it's a day-to-day that we actually see. We actually do a quarterly review as well as an annual review with, it starts first of all with 360s that are done on each of the people. So from their teams, their team actually 360s them and gives them feedback of what they're observing. They then have their captain or coach that are actually doing a 360 on them as well. And then, we're fortunate, we're a small company, we have less than 150 people, and that's one of the parts I love about our culture. I know everybody by the first name, so that we all get from the CEO level to the captain level, all the way down to the team member. We get everybody's feedback in that and actually come up with what we think is a very quantifiable review of how they're doing and living up to our culture and our beliefs as a company.
In being in a big company, you'd think it's just so mammoth. Are you getting sort of lost in the shuffle of processes like that? But not dissimilar to what you're doing. And we start from the bottom up. We do 360s. We do performance reviews, and then mid-year performance reviews, but we start with goals. So our basic tenet for culture is, I'm going to tell you what's expected of you. I'm going to help you get there, through training, development, coaching, and then I'm going to hold you accountable. So if you start with sort of those three principles of, how do I reinforce the culture? The first part is goal setting, and that's sitting down with, in your small business unit with your manager, talking about, what am I going to do this year? And how am I going to, get there? And there can be goals on the, I've got to meet this number, I've got to meet the sales target, as well as, you're a person that that doesn't work well with others. So one of your goals this year might be to, on our inclusiveness, of value, for example. How do I team better? How can I do that to make myself more productive? So people start out with goals, and we make sure that those are tied to the business goals and to things that are personal to them, and then build that into the performance review process. When we roll this up yearly, we have a big people review process that starts at the beginning of the year. That rolls up from the one level to the next level to the next level. So you're starting at the basic business level. I think people want to know that I've got a supervisor or manager that cares about me, that does know my name, that is concerned about my development, and is going to invest in me. So the sort of helping people get there aspect of it is, if you have a manager that's not developing people and not coaching people, we can see that too. And we want to make sure that we've got managers that are looking at, I've got somebody sort of on this end of the spectrum that really needs a lot of development work. Can I get them there or not? Sometimes the discussion might be, they're just not going to get there. And then that you've got to have that. There's some things I can teach, and maybe there's some things I can't, and the company isn't for everyone. And then when we've got people that are really high performing, how do we invest in them to make sure that they get up to the next level? Because from my experience, what gets you to the next level is not, can you do the books faster, or can you answer the phone faster if you're a call center person. It is the cultural aspects of it, right? It's the the leadership, the expertise, the one of them is clear thinking, the ability to articulate a vision and lead people. I think all of those are the factors that get somebody to a leadership level, and not if you can sort of just churn faster.
Greg, one of the challenges, it seems to me, is you have somebody who's a high performer meeting all their business numbers. They're just blowing it out of the box, but maybe they're not living up to the values. That would seem to be a challenge, because on the face of it, you wouldn't want to give somebody lower performance or less pay, and they might leave when they're performing well. Have you had to encounter that at R.G. Berry, where maybe you had some high performers, but they weren't quite where you wanted on the values, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I will tell you what we have decided as a company and as a team is that the values are non-negotiable. There's going to be times where your performance may not be there. Mm-hmm. You didn't pick the right color, you didn't buy the right product, you didn't deliver at the right time, and those are going to happen. That's just the business we're in. It's not a commodity business, it's a fashion business, and so those variables are going to happen. You're not going to be great every season. However, on the cultural side, or on the softer side of things, those are non-negotiable. So if there's things that you're doing that, if you're not showing integrity, if you're not having transparency, if you're not a team leader or a team player, if you're being inclusive and not if you're doing those things, those are just non-negotiables to us. And so, for us, those are quick call-outs. I can tell you in our own company, the great news is I don't have to do it. I don't have to be the police. Typically it happens really at their peer level. Mm-hmm. The peers will actually sort them out. Their peers will say, you know what, this person isn't living to the values of the company within our team. They'll bring that up to the attention of whoever their team captain is, up to the coach's level. We'll usually have a process where we sit down with them and bring it to their attention, and have a process of either, hey, do you think you can correct this because it is non-negotiable, you knew what the rules were up front, and move forward from there. But the great news is actually the peer pressure, not the subordinate pressure or the senior pressure that puts it on. It's actually the peer pressure that help us live by them.
And that's a lot of work. So what Greg said, he'd rather coach and he'd rather evaluate somebody right out of the box, right? Mm-hmm. So I think coming into the company, if you've got a very well articulated set of values, then the interview process helps you call out the kind of people who just won't fit in your environment. And again, not good person, bad person, but some people fit and some people just don't fit in the environment. And one of the things that I've heard from candidates, because I'll ask candidates when I'm interviewing somebody for a company, did you hear anything that surprised you? Anything that you want to clarify before you go. And the number one thing I hear is you're all amazingly consistent in what you talk about and what you think are the success factors for the company. So I think that's great for me to know, and super important that people, when they're looking at candidates, are very clear and make it very clear to people that are looking at a company like GE or RG Berry, that here's the things that make somebody successful, and if that's not going to be the way you want to operate, then best not to come. And again, it's usually not the are you a good accountant that makes somebody successful. And as I look at mid-career people, I'll usually have a discussion that I know you can do great work. There's a lot of different places to do great work. Here's how we do it. Does that fit with the way you want to do work? And if it doesn't, probably best not to come here.
It seems like there's a lot of time involved in the management team in making this work, because the employees can develop and give each other feedback, and the top executive team can formulate the vision and values, make sure it ties into the strategy. But to me, it seems like what really hits the road is that mid-level manager, that if they don't value talent management, if they don't have the discussions, if they don't have career discussions, performance discussions, what do you do at R.G. Berry to kind of help the manager, hold them accountable, if you will? I know it's part of their values that you might select them on and recruit them for, but how do you make sure that this discussion takes place? Everything they have to do in the slipper business and the handbag industry, I mean, that's all very important, but so talent management might seem something you might want to put aside when you're busy. What kind of advice can you give to the middle market firm about how to do that, and what do you do at R.G. Berry?
Well, I think first of all, it really starts with, at the beginning, and I know we have lots of business students here, and they get lots of great formal training on how to finance a company, how to structure a company, how to use all the metrics to get the company right. And so when they get into their leadership roles, the first thing they want to do is come up with their strategy or their vision of where to go. And if you really read Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, that's the first mistake that most leaders do, is they're all about getting their vision or their strategic direction in order. In Good to Great, it actually teaches you, first, before you get the strategy, first get the right people. And that might, go against what you may think intuitively. But what I found is it doesn't matter how great the vision is, how great the strategy is. The old days of the CEO coming down from the mount with the plan, and this is what we're going to do, those days are gone. It's first and foremost to make sure you have the right team. And if you take an industry like ours, our business, most of our products are good for maybe 3 to 6 months, and then it's on to the next fashion. And so our ability to have people who can change, who can move, who can interact with one another is so far more important than are they the best designer out there. Because the best designer may be the best today, but tomorrow the trends change, and can they adapt and can they interact with people going forward? So when we take it down to a middle manager level, we really want to make sure that first and foremost they're on the bus. And we talk about not only being on the bus, but being in the right chair of the bus. And I think that in today's world, because everybody wants the black and white answer, what is the metric, what is the number, et cetera, I think they really miss the secret sauce of, first and foremost, if I have the right team and I have the right people that are committed to the vision, and I think that's what we want to make sure we do, is that we have our middle managers really committed to the vision and mission we want to accomplish. Long term, we're going to win. We may miss a season, we may not have a great quarter, but that's not what it's about. It's long term, we will win if we have everybody aligned up and engaged in that process. So we really want to make sure before we go through all the analysis and try to go through all the correction on performance management and everything else, that long term people really understand what we're trying to accomplish, and are they excited and engaged in that mission. Because in our business, you can teach people to do. We're not doing rocket science in our business. It's it's a lot of add and subtract. It's not that it's not that tough. We're not making turbines like General Electric is. It's the fashion business. So,
Nancy, what are the benefits of a strong culture, particularly one that supports talent management?
Yeah, I think in any company has limited resources, so big, small, or in the middle, you have limited resources. So I think it helps you to hire the right people. Hiring misses are really difficult. It helps you to look at the resources that you're going to use to train people, and where am I putting those? Am I putting those with this person or that person? We hire people for the long run. So I want to make sure, as you talked about getting people that know the culture and can help you through cycles. So if I have a very strong culture and I'm always focused on the things that make us work, if the business is good, if the business is bad, you've got people who are, can operate in a lot of different cycles because they've got this strong underpinning of how we work and how we get stuff done. I think as you grow, as you have locations that are in different areas of the country or the world, if you don't have a strong culture, things can happen, when you get further and further away from home base. So if you have people that know, no matter where I am, no matter what, the rules of business in another country, no matter the things that I think I need to do or the locals think I need to do, or whatever might happen, that this is the way we operate at GE, always with integrity, that helps you to be able to expand your business because no matter where anybody goes, I've got this way of working that's going to take me from point A to point B. And I know R.G. Berry just made some acquisitions, that you're starting to expand where you haven't expanded before, right? So a strong culture helps you as you, get overseas locations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you manage a culture integration in Brazil or China or wherever R.G. Berry might go?
Yeah, it's interesting. Nancy mentioned the 2 acquisitions. We did 2 acquisitions this past year, and we also have an office in Hong Kong with 23 of our own employees. And it's interesting. We spent 2.5 years finding these companies, and a lot of the part that we did on it is we wanted to understand the cultures of their company, because we knew if their company had a culture that was, diabolical to ours or polar to ours, that long term it wasn't going to work, that we'd probably lose people. And the fact of the matter is when you make an acquisition, at the end of the day, what do you get? You get people. The products can be, changed or moved to somewhere else, but at the end of the day, what you're really paying for is the quality of those people. And we made sure that they had core beliefs, behaviors very, very similar to ours. Not that they exhibited it once, but over years, that was what they were known in the marketplace. That's what their customers knew them as. And so when they came into R.G. Berry, it kind of felt right to them because that's how they were living already. We had an acquisition opportunity, actually it was quite a large one. And it was a great company. They were making tons and tons of money. But at the end of the day, when we went through the due diligence of that acquisition, we found some things that, quite frankly, they were playing some games, and we said, you know what, this is never going to work with us. And they had, all the good reasons, of all the explanations and all the excuses of what they were doing. But at the end of the day, R.G. Berry, we know we wouldn't have accepted that. So we had to pass on that acquisition. And we had some board members, we had some team members saying, gosh, I can't believe you guys walked away from that. But we knew that long term it was going to be a clash of culture and that it wasn't going to stick long term anyway. So it is a challenge. I spent the month of December, the first 2 weeks of December, I was in China. And our office there, I spent time actually training them. And you're right, it's a different culture, it's different people. But things like trust, things like honesty, things like integrity, those are global characters, and they understood it, and they understand what we stand for. And it's something that you never stop training, you never stop developing, and it will be a lifelong process with us, but we think it's something that we're definitely getting to return our investment on.
Yeah, I think I've probably learned the most about GE culture doing an acquisition and doing the due diligence and then feeling comfortable doing the acquisition. We have a pretty structured process for cultural integration, so we sat down and looked at things like decision making and chains of command and all that. But once we got into it and the rubber met the road, you started to see the places where we diverged. And the best thing for me was to get somebody to build the trust with people in the acquired company and have what I called a listening post. So somebody would come back to me and said, you're saying stuff that makes sense to you in GE but isn't making sense to us. How do we translate that into a way that makes sense in the new company? Or orientations to career, orientations to performance management. We have a big orientation to differentiation. So we want to make sure that our stars get differentiated in a very material way versus people who aren't doing as well. And we, ended up finding out that we bought a company that was more, everybody's in the middle, and we don't think that makes the best people do better. So I think, sometimes you take your culture a little bit for granted if it is strong, and then you get to see, as you bounce it up against another culture, what are the differences? How do I keep what's really good, because you made the acquisition for some reason, but how do I morph over time? We looked at that acquisition, and the first year was sort of getting the nuts and bolts set up. The second year where people started to talk more about the culture and seeing the differences, and by sort of into year 2.5, the people that really felt like GE was for them were saying, I want more. Now I get, what it is to be rewarded, what it is to be developed, and I want more. It was a little frustrating because you want it to go pretty fast, right? You're excited about the acquisition, you want to get the infrastructure in place, and then you want to move on to all the cultural things. But that, building a strong culture takes time, and you can't just have the pitch or the mug or the T-shirt and move on. It's an ongoing process.
What can you tell the middle market firms about building your culture and talent management? I mean, what kind of tips would you give them, Greg, based on your experience about, like, here's 3 things you ought to do or 3 things you shouldn't do? I mean, what kind of advice would you give middle market firms who want to better understand their culture and then maybe develop it in a different direction than it is today?
Well, a couple of things that we did. First of all, you got to decide what you think that culture is. What you're going, is it going to be a buttoned-up one with suits and ties? Is it going to be one that's, jeans and T-shirts? What kind of culture are you going to have? The second thing that we did that I think was important is we actually brought in professionals. We brought in Covey Institute, and we actually started with the individual. We thought that before we could actually build our teams and our culture, that we had to build the individual. And so we brought in Covey that really worked on the 7 habits, worked on courses such as the Speed of Trust. And we actually require everybody in the company to take these classes. We actually require even our new employees within a certain amount of time, they have to graduate from each of those classes. So at the end of the day, everybody knows what is expected of them. They've all been trained in it. And so I don't think we could have ever gotten there just by going through it ourselves. It would have taken a lot more time, but we actually brought in professionals that were experts at it, and I thought Covey did a great job of doing it. We still use them today. We still have maximizer courses that people have to take. We have a monthly luncheon that a team member teaches each month of one of the habits, so that no matter what the habit is, you're refreshing in yourself, you're sharpening the saw, you're getting better. So for us, it was really important because they didn't have the infrastructure when I got there to really bring in some professionals to really set that table. Those were a couple key things that I think made a difference.
Nancy, what would you like to
Yeah, I don't want people to be daunted by this because it seems like it touches everything in your company, and where do you start? And I think in the end it should touch everything in your company. But I think you can start small. You can bring in professionals. You can get a cross-functional team in your group, in your company, to take a look at. If you can't afford outside help, let's look at 5 or 10 successful people here and what made them successful. What do I like about what they do? What are the real crucial things here that resonate in my company, and they could be different in every company. And then how do I start to operationalize that? And really the biggest thing you need to do is to build a regular rhythm of either the training or goal setting or feedback. But I'd start with goal setting. I mean, we're still early in the year. If you sat with people in your company and figured out what's the 5 things that make people successful, then how do I build a goal plan around that? How do I have people start to think about, if that's what makes me successful here, the how in addition to the what? What do I want to have my team sit down and have a document? Can they have a document in their hand that guides them through the year, and then a manager can say, this is what I'm holding you accountable for, and here's what you're doing well, and here's what you're not doing well. And I think helping people to get there, take some of the fear factor, if you will, out of, they're creating these other demands other than just meeting my numbers. How do I get there? I think you need to help managers learn how to be coaches. I think there has to be a commitment from the senior level that this is something that we're going to do. We're going to go on this journey. We're going to start to build goals. We're going to start to build a performance management system. We're going to have regular reviews. We're going to start to develop people. I think if you're looking at your HR team, I'll give just a plug for HR people. If you're looking at your HR team as the people that do the payroll and benefits, then you're not going to get out of them what you need. You need people that are going to project manage and champion this, because their goal has got to be, how do I create the highest performing team on the planet? And what are the things I need to do to create the highest performing team on the planet? And really clear success factors, really clear expectations, helping people get there, and then holding them accountable is the way to go. And it's got to have a process that gets baked into your company, whether it's 5 people or 10 people or 5,000 people. And I think the continuous learning that you talked about, you never let it rest, really reinforces all the cultural norms that you started to put into place.
Yeah, something you said struck me. This whole process is transformational. It's not transactional. It's not a performance management system. It's not a question we ask in the. It's transformational. It's ongoing.
Yeah,
and,
it's
and
not
you
a
have
one
to have
and
the
done.
system to support that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that your team members, if they have any sense that it's the flavor of the month or anything like that, it doesn't work. It is a lifelong process. You've got to be committed to it every year. You can't step back and say, well, we just had a bad month and we're not going to do that this month. We have to make a commitment to it. And trust me, there's been times where we've been pushed that, boy, it's the end of a quarter, we're busy, we don't have time for this. And trust me, I've had all the people come to me at certain times to do it. At the end of the day, the management team has to say, no, we're committed to this. And I think once the people understand that, then everybody really jumps on board and they realize how important it is. But you're right, it's not a one time and everyone is cured. Trust me, I slip back all the time, and I need to be reinforced of what I need to work on. And so it's just something that I think it's sustainable, long term. I think it is a huge competitive advantage long term, and for the companies who don't think it's important, that think, oh, that's just for those gooey companies out in San Francisco or anything else,
Right.
They're really missing out on a big opportunity of unleashing innovation and unleashing the power of a team.
In your values, your success factors can change over time. So as we've gone from, say, we got a new chairman of the company 10 years ago, he went on a journey of looking at, what do I think are the success factors? And we started to build some new, values under him, and then refresh those a couple of years ago. Actually sent teams out to interview lots of different companies. We went to the Boston Celtics, turned the Boston Celtics around. So we sent a team out to interview, like, how'd you guys do that? And it was fascinating. I screened for the right people. I set goals for them, and I held them accountable to meet those goals. And we looked at West Point, where it is life and death, right? So they're really training leaders, and looked at a lot of different things, and started to try and contemporize, our growth values, and then, but more importantly, the behaviors under them. How do we make them more contemporary? So we're always looking at. How do we keep being, a great leadership company? In fact, some of the feedback we got was, why are you asking us about leadership? You're GE, aren't you supposed to know about leadership? Well, if you decide 10 years ago that you figured out what leadership is and then stop, then you stop growing as a company. So we're on a constant, how do we refresh? How do we keep it alive? And how do we look at where we don't do well as a company? So there's one aspect of our growth values where everybody's, sort of medium, and then we can develop training and experiences that help us get better in those areas. So it's a journey.
Great. Well, you've both shared some wonderful insights into culture and its relationship with talent management, but I'm sure there's some questions from the audience that we want to hear from the audience and their questions that they might have. So why don't we go to the audience and take a question?
Sure. Mr. Tunney, how do you get the message out that RG Berry has high performance team environment and high team member engagement in order to attract new talent?
Well, first of all, I think what's happened to us is the fashion industry we're in. Even though it's a $30 billion industry, it's a very small industry. Everybody knows each other. And what happens is with a company like ours, if I took the last 6 years, the amount of team members we've had that have voluntarily left, not that we asked them to leave, but they left on their own, I can count them on one hand. And out of those on one hand, more than half of those have asked to come back to the company. They left to go to a competitor, they were promised X, they got there, and they found out, geez, I'm going to get more money, but it's not like it used to be where I'm at. They don't work, they don't understand, they don't collaborate the way we should. So the proof is in the pudding, and our best disciples are those who have left the company and want to come back. So the industry has learned about us, and when we have opportunities that come available, there's a lot of people in the industry that come to us. I spend a lot of time interviewing people that we probably won't hire for another 2 or 3 years because the position isn't open, but they're interested in our company, we're interested in them, and we'll tell them, you know what, we think you'd be a great fit for us. I don't have a job for you right now, but when the time's right, we'd like to come back to you, and we've come back and hired those people. The other thing that we're doing is proactively, we do recruit at Ohio State. We do have an executive trainee program, and we instituted that 3 years ago, so we have some people now that are into their 3rd year of it, and hopefully they're good disciples of telling them about the team and what it's like to be there. And what we find is actually the new and the young people that we're bringing in, they actually love the culture. We find that they actually like it a little bit more. They like the structure of it, what it represents to them. And so I think on those 2 fronts, industry-wise and then our own recruits and them going back to OSU. And I remember the first year we went there and we recruited, you know, we said we're R.G. Berry, and people said, who's R.G. Berry? Now we actually have people lined up and lots of people interviewing for those positions. And I think we're getting better each year with the young people that we're bringing in.
Is there another question from the audience?
Hi. Both of you talked about the beliefs and all the behaviors that are deeply ingrained in your cultures. Can you talk about how that shows up in day-to-day activities?
Yeah, I'll take that on. I think we get new people that come into the company, and they are, you can be intimidated by coming into a large company. You can feel like, you know, I can't ask questions, and I can't show that I don't know things. So if I think about our inclusiveness growth value, I'll tell people, you can ask anybody almost anything, and I've never run into people who won't take the time for you to sit with you and to explain what they do and to help. So, you know, one of the knowledge is power, you know, not invented here, you know, keep my arms around sort of my turf, we can't all win together. We're really trying to make sure that we all win together. So one of the values I see for employees with this is people are willing to help each other out. And I've heard this from new employees. They said, you know, I came, I was very impressed by the fact that people are willing to help me. People are willing to help us all succeed together. And it's a basis, you know, it's a word that we coined a while ago that's hard to say, but it's boundarylessness. And, you know, the spell checker, you know, gets it every time, but it's really, you know, part of our values of, you know, if you break down the boundaries between, you know, between people and between business units, you know, we all win together. And that's I think, been a, you know, a great, you know, thing for us, and something that makes employees that are new, or, you know, all employees feel like they can win together.
I think the biggest area where I've seen it, where you see where you actually visualizing this in the workplace, is actually hasn't been in the workplace, it's been outside of it, where you see these team members that are going above and beyond for one another outside of work. We've had team members in the last few years, a couple of them got cancer, and the amount of support and the relationships that were built outside of the company, and what I got to observe from the outside and watching these team members help one another, it wasn't just a job from 8 to 5. There was a commitment to one another, not only in business but in self. What I see some of these folks doing in their community and representing our company. So to me, it hasn't been just what's been going on in the 4 walls, but actually what goes outside of it and their interactions with some of their team members.
Well, thanks both of you for being here today and sharing your insights on culture and its relationship to talent management. And hopefully we'll, both GE and RG Berry will continue growing as they have in the past and in the future. So thanks for your insights.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
And we're delighted about the GE OSU relationship, and This has been a lot of fun.
Yes, it has been. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That concludes our CEO Growth Champion discussion on building a corporate culture. I would like to thank our panelists for sharing their unique perspectives and our audience for attending today's event. Please note that the webinar will be available for on-demand viewing on our center website, www.middlemarketcenter.org. There you will also find additional information on academic research, corporate outreach, student activities, and the center itself. We will continue accepting questions from the virtual audience for an additional 30 minutes after the conclusion of the webinar, and we will respond to the most frequently asked questions via email and posting on the website. Thanks for joining and have a great day.